Cadet Ronnie Ampong Jr. and this is my report, Introduction to Globalization. Here are the topics. Number 1. Dimensions of Globalization. Number 2. Definition based on dimensions. Number 3. Attributes of Globalization. Number 4. 6 core claims of globalization. Number 5. Definition based on theories. Number 6. Arguments on globalization. Dimensions of globalization. There are 3 parts. Globalization as economic process. Globalization as political process. Globalization as cultural process. Economic process is a phenomenon involves the increasing linkage of national economics. Political process subsets of issues pertaining to the principle of state sovereignty, the growing impact of intergovernmental organizations, and the prospects for global governance. Cultural process, growing network of complex cultural interconnections and interdependencies that characterize modern social life. 2. Definition of globalization. There are 3 parts. Based on economics expert, based on political expert, based on cultural expert. Economic view. Globalization means fast speed of trade, global economic organization, multinational and transnational corporation, trade blocs, free trade, privatization, less tariffs. Political science. Globalization is a challenge to the nation state, strength of the regional blocs, emergence of global political norms, multilateral and bilateral relations among nation states, emergence of corporations, international laws, world governance. View. Globalization means establishment, global village, shrinking world, cultural imperialism, borderless world, adoption of other cultures. Number 3. Attributes of globalization. There are 4 parts. A. Various forms of connectivity. B. Expansions and stretching of social relations. C. Intensification and acceleration of social exchanges and activities. D. Occurs objectively. Various forms of connectivity. They are diverse such as economic, political, cultural, and etc. They are enabled by various factors, pressures, media, and etc. They are uneven such as different degrees of interconnections. B. Expansions and stretching of social relations. Regional and international NGOs, sister cities mechanism, government associations, MNCs and TNCs. C. Intensification and acceleration of social exchanges and activities. Door-to-door, mail delivery to FB, messages, IG, Snapchat, Twitter, live TV telecast, travel capacities brought about by low airfares. Occurs objectively. Think about world. Associate ourselves with global trends. Sense of responsibility. Number 4. 6 core claims of globalization. Number 1. Globalization is about the liberalization and global integration of markets. Number 2. Globalization is inevitable and irreversible. Number 3. Nobody is in charge of globalization. Number 4. Globalization benefits everyone in the long run. Number 5. Globalization furthers the spread of democracy in the world. Number 6. Globalization requires a global war on terror. 5. Definition based on theories. Globalization as globalony. Globalony contradicts to globalization. claims that accounts on globalization are incorrect, imprecise, or exaggerated, and everything that can be linked to transnational process is cited as evidence for globalization. Categories for arguments of globalism: rejectionists, skeptics, modifiers. Number 1. Rejectionist disputes the usefulness of globalization as sufficiently precise analytical concept. Globalization as a vacuous term, suggesting that it has been used in academic discourse to refer to anything. Suggestion for improvement. Number 1. Provide additional examples of how the term globalization obscures more than enlightens. Number 2. Complement the social scientific enterprise of exploring globalization is an objective process. 2. Skeptics emphasizes limited nature of current globalizing processes. The world economy is not global but one centered on Europe, Eastern Asia, and North America. Majority of economic activity around the world still remains primarily on financial flows. Warns against drawing global conclusions from the argument against the existence of economic globalization assumes that globalization is primarily an economic phenomenon. All other dimensions of globalization as reflection of deeper economic process. Number 3. Modifiers disputes the novelty of the process and proofs, acknowledges the existence of moderate globalizing tendencies, implying that globalization has often been applied in historically imprecise manner. Argue that the modern capitalist economy in which we live today has been global since its inception 5 centuries ago. Globalizing tendencies has been proceeding along the continuum of modernization of a long time, but not the least. Number 6. Arguments of globalization. First, Immanuel Wallerstein. According to him, globalization is a triumph of capitalist world economy tied by the global division of labor. David Harvey. According to him, globalization is the compression of time and space. According to Martin Albro, globalization is a process by which the peoples of the world are incorporated into a single world society. According to Anthony Giddens, globalization is an intensification of worldwide social relations that link distant localities. According to Arjun Appadurai, globalization is a global cultural process and a product of the infinitely varied mutual contest, sameness, and difference. Peter Deakin, globalization is a form of internalization that implies integration between internationally depressed economic activities. Byros and Richard Kuzel write, globalization is interlinking financial structures through an increasing numbers of cross-border transactions to create an international divisions of labor. Lastly, according to Robert Cox, globalization is an internationalizing of production, division of labor, new migratory improvements, and the competitive environment that accelerates these processes.
Globalization became a commonly used term in the late 1980s. It is often used as a concept through which we imagine the world as globally interconnected, and this state of the world is typically portrayed as a new thing. But if we cut to the core of what we are actually talking about when using the term globalization, the phenomena that constitute globalization is that goods or products, people, information, and money move through the world on a global or close to global scale. The fact that there is movement of goods, people, information, and money on the Earth's surface is, however, old news. The earliest example of one of these phenomena is when the human race migrated out of Africa to colonize the world. However, the circumstances through which these movements take place have been changed through histories of technological development, whether this be technologies like sailing, print media, railways, cars, planes, phones, or the internet. While the phenomena that constitute globalization and their enabling through technological development is a historical fact, theorists tend to debate on when this reached a level at which the situation can be described as globalization, and not just cross-local movement. The famous sociologist and globalization researcher Roland Robertson has noted the period between 1880 and 1925 as the crucial takeoff period for globalization, arguing that this period marks a concrete structuring of the world as a whole. An example of this structuring is the organization of territories into nation-states. This view supports an often voiced idea that globalization is a contemporary challenge that we must rise to in order to arrive at a globalized state where the world is one. It is, however, important to understand that the movements that constitute globalization take place under very different local circumstances and therefore affect different people in different places in different ways. Bollywood movies may, for an example, hold very different importance as a phenomena of globalized media, whether you are from Pakistan or Greenland. Furthermore, holding on to the phenomena that constitute globalization, the movement of goods, people, information, and money, we can conclude that some of these phenomena are as old as humanity itself, and that they are a condition for the human experience, although the circumstances under which they take place are constantly changing. So I hope that this has made you a little wiser and a lot more curious on globalization. Remember that you can see the references for this presentation in the description of the film.
That ends to our discussion. Thank you for watching. Hope that you learned something about the introduction to globalization.